TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I am your friendly neighborhood philosopher, David Wood, and with me now is the author of his very own Quran. Isn't that, how's that cool? How cool is that, man?
Me and Joseph Smith.
Hey, how did you come up with your own Quran? I was told that no one can imitate the Quran, and that it's impossible.
That's it, David. That's the real article, the genuine Quran.
So, what is the? Well, first of all, for everyone right now who's scrambling to get this, sorry, you're not cool enough. I've got it now. No one else has it. I have it. Robert Spencer has it. No one else has it yet.
Right here.
Yeah. So Robert has his. I have mine. And none of you have any. Now,
May 3rd.
May 3rd, this is coming out. That's why you can't get it now. You can't get it for over a month. But tell us a little bit about the critical Quran, Robert.
The critical Quran, David, is the first, or if not the first, one of the first honest translations of the Quran into English, where many translations, as you well know, try to obscure what the Quran says. The critical Quran makes it as clear as it claims to be, or as clear as it can be. Plus commentary from all the major tafsir commentaries on the Quran. Ibn Kathir, Qurtubi, Tafsir al-Jalalain, they're all in there and more, to give the mainstream understanding of the various passages, plus variant readings, plus a couple of apocryphal Shiite surahs, plus all kinds of other goodies. This is the one Quran you need, one-stop shopping for Islamic apologists, critics of Islam, lovers of Islam. This is the Quran for you.
And so I have the link in the description box for anyone who wants to pre-order it. I'm just checking out the Quran right here. It says in Surah 9, verse 29, "Fight against those who do not believe in Allah or the last day, and do not forbid what Allah and His Messenger have forbidden, and do not follow the religion of truth, even if they are among the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." Now, that's just, I can already dismiss this entire book as silly. That's supposed to say, based on what Muslims around the world tell me, only fight in self-defense.
Yes, that's right. That's right. This is the Quran that Muslims read when they are among other Muslims and not trying to fool unbelievers.
All right.
So here is the actual thing.
So, all right.
It's got all the things that they tell you do not exist in it. For example, of course, the notorious passage with which you are well familiar and have defended this reading of and explained why it is the correct reading, and I am getting to it. Chapter 33, verse 56. Indeed, Allah and His angels pray.
Whoa!
O you who believe, ask blessings on Him and greet Him with a worthy greeting.
We finally got the authentic translation that Allah prays.
Right. And the note explains that the verb in question, yasalluna, means praise. It does not mean blesses, as it is often rendered in English by people who don't want you to know that Allah is praying to someone in the Quran.
Yeah, you can actually go to 10 different Muslim commentators and translators and get 10 different commentaries and translations on what it means, because as soon as you're denying what it actually means, you can say that it means anything else. Yeah. Very, very strange.
But it's quite clear. Salat is prayer, and that's the verb that's right there.
Mm-hmm.
Not really difficult. It's just inconvenient.
Mm-hmm. All right. So everyone wants to get that. And as soon as it's available for everyone and everyone's had a chance to get their copy, maybe we'll have some little studies in the future. Should be good stuff. All right. Now, Robert, you've seen recently, because you sent me a tweet from someone who was blaming you and me and Pamela Geller and Stephen Crowder and I think a couple of others for a stabbing of Sheikh Uthman. And it's
the guy I never even heard of.
Yeah,
I'm a bad person, David.
You never even heard of the guy, and yet you're responsible for stabbing him. But just to
Yeah.
be clear, it is for putting out material like this. That's the reason.
That. Yes.
That is the reason. Anyway, let me pull up the tweet in question real quick so we can show how a stabbing is interpreted in Islam. So here's the tweet. It comes from Leif Erikson.
Leave there.
The Leif Erikson. And it says, a Muslim brother was stabbed by a radical MAGA Q-nut Christian extremist in a Republican-run San Diego. Thanks a lot, Trump, Republicans, Fox News, Ben Shapiro, David Wood, Steven Crowder, Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller, ex-Muslims, and etc. Hashtag MAGA death cult, Christian death cult. Now that is very interesting. He's getting a lot of information out of a very short video where the guy basically, no, to be fair, the guy who was coming at Sheikh Uthman's car clearly did not like Muslims. He called Sheikh Uthman a terrorist and so on. But I don't know how you're getting all these different affiliations when all he said was he clearly did not like Muslims. But he says to Sheikh Uthman, I've seen your videos, you're a terrorist. So he's talking to Sheikh Uthman. It's something about Sheikh Uthman's content that convinces this man that Sheikh Uthman is a terrorist. Not, hey, I was watching Robert Spencer, who's never heard of you, and he said, boy, that's Sheikh Uthman. Someone needs to walk up and just jab him with a knife. Nothing like that, oddly enough. So you're saying you weren't even familiar with this guy.
That's right. Never heard of him until I saw the photo of him with the blood all over his shirt.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah. As well, we'll take a look here in a second. But yeah, I'm now convinced that was not blood. I said that the color looked off, and AP is actually turning out to be one of Sheikh Uthman's biggest offenders in the sense of giving him the benefit of the doubt. And if everything I'd ever known about Sheikh Uthman was that he was just completely trustworthy and truthful, then I would give him the benefit of the doubt too. But once I catch you repeatedly lying and fabricating things, then it's then I have to be very skeptical. And if you're at all skeptical of this picture, seems to look fake. In fact, let me go ahead and pull it up. So this is the picture of Sheikh Uthman, the picture that circulated on Twitter showing that he had been stabbed. And if you're looking far away, it looks like a stabbing. But if you've used fake blood tends to look real on clothes. But once it's been smeared on skin, it doesn't darken the way normal blood does. Blood darkens when it's oxygenated and it's spread on your skin. It should be pretty dark. Blood turns almost brownish when it's on skin and been fully oxygenated and so on. So does not look real to me. But look when we zoom in, right? Look when we zoom in on this wound. Now, I had pointed out that the closest thing you have to what looks like a stab wound is down at the bottom, where it looks like there's a darker spot. In which case, I've never actually been stabbed. I've known several people who have been stabbed, and they usually talk about they stabbed and then it soaks their pants. Why? Because blood starts running down their body. Here we have no wound up top. We have a wound down at the bottom, and the blood somehow runs about 8 inches up Sheikh Uthman's body. So maybe he was doing.
He wills, David.
Yeah. His blood miraculously flowed against gravity. So that's interesting. Unless he was doing a headstand. Now, what I pointed out when I was talking to AP was, again, I've worked with fake blood. I've seen plenty of real blood. Fake blood tends to look real when you soak it into some clothes. It doesn't look real when it's spread on a hand, and that looks like almost orangish, pinkish on his hand. It looks exactly like fake blood. You look at some of the thumbprints on his throat there, and it looks almost purplish. Does not look like real blood. But I saw some people point out, and they're absolutely correct. If you look at the picture, you see blood spatters off to the left of the wound. And you see little specks of blood everywhere. And anyone who knows anything about a wound that's leaking blood, the spatters come from outside, right? Spatters come from outside the body. Like you get shot in the head, and if the bullet goes all the way through and blows your brains out the back of your head, then you get blood spatters on a wall. That comes from something that is squirting out blood. That does not come from soaking from inside a garment. If you didn't have those blood spatters, the big spot of blood would look like it's soaked out, except for it's going against gravity. But blood spatters do not come from blood that's soaking from a wound under a garment. The garment just soaks with blood, and the blood gets lower and lower towards the ground. That's how it actually works. Blood spatters from outside means someone was squirting this with a bottle and it splattered a little bit. Someone's squirting fake blood out of a bottle onto a scalp, and you got some spatters when it came out. That's where you get spatters from.
Why did this guy have a bottle of fake blood on him when he has an altercation with this MAGA lout in San Diego? Is it possible that the whole thing was set up and that MAGA lout's wearing a hat and a mask in order to prevent identification, and he's actually in on the whole thing?
Yeah, you're a little more conspiracy and staged, suspicious than me. Now I'm at the opposite. I'm at the other end. I'm at the complete end of the spectrum. I never believe in a conspiracy, even if there was a conspiracy. I probably wouldn't believe it. Mm-hmm.
He said, "I've seen your videos." Didn't he say that?
Yep.
Now I got to tell you, David, I do this every day, all day, every day. I never heard of this sheikh.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying I've heard of every sheikh.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there are many that I've never heard of. But when you're talking Islamic apologists, Dawa propagandists, pretty much all of them have come across my radar at one time or another over the last 30 years. I've never heard of this guy. And yet, some guy, some random idiot in San Diego who is violently minded, chances upon him and has watched his videos. Are you starting to see the problem here?
I see the problem, and the only reason I don't think completely staged was that guy seems like a pretty not Sheikh Uthman. The guy who was coming at him seems like a pretty good actor who, if this was all fake, especially in the post Jussie Smollett era, and if this guy were to end up on the news, can you find this guy? It wouldn't be pretty difficult to catch him. And if you actually caught him, man, what's sad is even if it was totally fake, like police caught the guy and he's like, yeah, Sheikh Uthman paid me $10,000 to do this. Sheikh Uthman would say, it's a lie. He'd go totally Jussie Smollett, right? It's a lie. It's a lie. They're framing me. But Sheikh Uthman's fans would totally believe him. They would totally side with Sheikh Uthman.
No doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, the idea here is, definitely. So the conclusion, the most I can do, giving the benefit of the doubt, I do believe that there was some road rage incident. Just because if it were fake, I think I could have come up with a better story than this, just off the top of my head. If I were faking a story, I wouldn't have had it looking like it's road rage. I would have, this guy, came up to me when I'm preaching and stabbed me and so on. But looking like it's road rage, it looks like there's some sort of road rage incident. Someone cuts off someone else. They start arguing, and then Sheikh Uthman pulls over. The guy jumps out and says and recognizes him. And actually, hey, I know who you are. And then something happens. Sheikh Uthman gets out the car, punches the guy. The guy stabs him, and then Sheikh Uthman realizes, wait a minute, this is a gold mine of popularity. If I really ham this up and make it sound like I'm being targeted by the Islamophobic community and so on. So, hey, bring me the fake blood.
Fake blood? He carries around fake blood in his glove compartment?
No, he probably called his buddy, guys, get down here. Yeah, no, it's fine. That's fine. I only got a little jab, so I'm good here. Yeah, just come down, bring the fake blood. We're gonna soak this thing. Matter of fact, stop by the Halloween store, grab the fake blood, bring that down here. So
you're talking a half hour, an hour after.
Oh yeah, I mean, it could have been hours. Could have been hours. I mean, he could have went home, chilled for a while, and stuff like that. Then they came up with a plan and so on. So anyway, again, looks to me like something did happen. There was a punch thrown. He wouldn't have needed to say that if it were totally fake. So, he could have just said, "I was minding my own business, preaching peacefully. A man came up, said, in the name of Jesus and in the name of David Wood and Robert Spencer and the apostate prophet, I stab you." And then he stabbed me. And so think he was, given the jab. And Marion Gran here said, being stabbed makes you popular? Yes, because go look for the commentaries on it. It's Sheikh Uthman is not afraid of anything. Sheikh Uthman, the hero of Islam. He understands that this is a way to gain popularity, massive popularity, very quickly. And so it looks like he turned a road rage incident into an Islamophobic attack. With that said, the guy clearly, if this is authentic, and I think that part of it is, this guy clearly did not like Muslims and was kind of a dirtbag. But let's go ahead and watch this clip. And people, this is This Week in Jihad. This is This Week in Jihad. Why are we talking about this? Well, what we're going to do is, as soon as we cover this story, then we're actually going to get into This Week in Jihad. We're going to compare it, right? Because the comparison here is when we talk about all these attacks that are carried out in the name of Allah, according to the teachings of Muhammad, we're told it has nothing to do with the commands of Allah or the teachings of Muhammad. And yet, if you have people who do nothing but condemn violence, somehow we're responsible for violence. And so who's responsible for violence? The people who condemn violence. Who's never responsible for violence? The people who call for violence, right? It's like whenever we're discussing Islam, somehow everyone lives in opposite world. So let's go ahead and check out this clip. We're not going to look at the whole thing. We're just going to look at the little clip. Language warning here if you're watching with your kids. This guy does curse and is a very nasty individual. But we'll just look at a short clip from this guy.
If I'm in San Diego, I'm going out to the park, I don't need any security, I don't need anything else. I have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will protect us. This person, he's not going to get away with it.
You're a fucking terrorist, dog.
I got you. You want to talk that
you,
stuff?
Man. Fuck you and your Muslim fucking bullshit, dog.
You want to
Fuck
talk that
you.
stuff?
I'm an infidel. What's up, motherfucker?
You want to? You think I'm scared of you?
Inshallah, this person is going to get caught. If he's watching, don't think you're going to get away with this, right? We have your face. You're not hiding enough. We have your weapon that's been given to the police. A report has already been filed. The detectives are on the case. Just like the other person who tried to attack us at the park, you're going to get caught.
All right. Well, that's all the footage we had of the guy. Now, the other, I would say, very suspicious thing here, Robert, is Sheikh Uthman says, the detectives have it. They have the weapon. So apparently the guy just drops his knife after stabbing Sheikh Uthman. So should be fingerprints there. Should be fingerprints. They've got the guy. Detectives are on the case. A police report has been filed. But we can't get anything from the police when, as you know, when there's some sort of attack, you can actually request through the Freedom of Information Act, the police reports. We haven't been able to get anything so far. And the only news report I saw on it from the area was someone who said, and they can't get a hold of Sheikh Uthman. So he's trying to expose this guy and won't talk to the media when they've got all this extra information?
That follows the pattern of fake hate crimes that we have seen for years. Islamophobic hate crimes. A girl says my hijab was torn off by these two guys in MAGA hats, and then there's no police report because she never went to the police. She only went to the papers. And this, again and again and again, we have seen this, that suddenly they clam up when it starts to be a police investigation.
Yeah, and everyone just keep in mind, you can go back and rewatch that clip. When the guy's coming up, he says, "I seen your videos. You're a terrorist."
Yeah,
I've seen your videos. No, I'm saying even if it's authentic, it's not. Again, it's not. I've seen the apostate prophet's videos. It's I've seen your videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and notice I'm saying that because you could watch Sheikh Uthman's stuff and conclude that he supports this stuff. What's that?
Not my videos. You were pointing at me and saying, "I've seen your videos."
Oh,
said, "I've seen Sheikh Uthman's videos."
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's pointing at Sheikh Uthman. I've seen your stuff. I've seen your stuff.
you, David. I don't think Sheikh Uthman is that big a deal. It's like lightning in a bottle. It's a 1 in a million shot that one of the people who watch him, and adversarially too, not one of his fans, and they happen to find him in a park in San Diego and stab him. It's what a coincidence.
Yeah, and the reason I see your point here is I've also been noticed in public hundreds of times, in malls, in airports, at Walmart, at McDonald's, various restaurants, just walking down the street. And whenever I hear, hey, you David Wood, I think, oh, maybe someone's about to clock me, but it's almost always a fan. It is very, very rarely anything but a fan.
That's
and
my
so
experience as well.
Yeah,
I did have one guy I gave my seat to in a rental car bus, and he later asked me if I was Robert Spencer. I said yes. He starts yelling at me and says, "You stop telling lies about Islam on Fox News." And I said, "I gave you my seat, man," but it did no good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the other reason we have for being awfully suspicious is we've caught Sheikh Uthman lying repeatedly. So here's the famous tweet from the past. So Al-Mansur, who's a very strict, very devout Muslim who calls out
Al-Maliki. Al-Mansur Al-Maliki on Twitter.
Yeah, looks like it.
Yeah, he was doubting this too. That's the first I saw it.
Yep.
Was when he was saying, "This doesn't look real. This picture of him with the blood all over." Anyway.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, Mansour was in a discussion with Sheikh Uthman on Twitter, and was calling him out for not supporting offensive jihad. And Uthman said something. What are you talking about? I do. And then Mansour says, so to be absolutely clear, you agree that jizya should be imposed on all disbelievers, and if they refuse, they should be fought and their women and children enslaved. Notice it's all disbelievers, and if they refuse, then your wives and children are enslaved. Do you agree with that, Sheikh Uthman? And Uthman responds, of course, and I've already made all of this clear in my durus, but you never reached out to ask me. So he responds very clearly, and then in another tweet, Mansour says there at the top, he's using this screenshot, and he says, Uthman Farooq is actually a pathological liar. This is a Muslim calling him out. Uthman Farooq is actually a pathological liar. When with Christians, he'll deny things like offensive jihad and slavery, but when with Muslims, he'll affirm it. Him and David Wood are both vile. we're both vile. So anyway, the problem here is that so Sheikh Uthman tweeted that, and then during a live stream, once Mansour started circulating this, saying that hey, Sheikh Uthman has two faces. Sheikh Uthman was asked during the live stream, hey, why did you tweet that? And he starts explaining, well, yeah, when I said that, well, because we're having the conversation, and then the conversation, they cut off the beginning of the conversation because what the conversation was about, blah, 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 blah. And so when I said that, what I said was, blah, blah, and he says this over and over and over again, that he's the one who said it. And then once Christians started using it and say, look at what this man calls for, then suddenly, I never said that. That was a volunteer. That was a volunteer who works for me. And then so once it was pointed out, wait a minute, you said repeatedly that you're the one who said that. That was your conversation. Then he came out with the miracle answer. But I didn't say I tweeted it.
Oh.
And his followers just said, what? Oh, you Sheikh Uthman refuted you. And you, to this day, Robert, to this day, you can line up 100 Sheikh Uthman ibn Farooq followers. Lay all of this evidence out. You can show the tweet that is clearly claiming to be Sheikh Uthman. You can show them the clips of Sheikh Uthman repeatedly saying that he's the one who said those things, and then show Sheikh Uthman saying, "Nope, wasn't me," and then you can ask 100 Sheikh Uthman fans, "Did he tweet that stuff?" 100 out of 100 Sheikh Uthman fans will say, "No, absolutely not. He did not."
You obey your sheikh.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he's an Ethiopian.
Yep. And just, that was not a dig from Robert Spencer, ladies and gentlemen. That is a quote from Muhammad. That is a quote from Muhammad. And Muhammad's full quote was an Ethiopian with a head like a raisin. Right? That's what Muhammad actually said. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, all of this. Oh, and by the way, I have one more short clip just to show that Sheikh Uthman actually does advocate violence in response to people joking, making fun of things, and so on. Let's go ahead and watch a short clip. And the guy, his face is kind of blurred here, but it looks like he's talking to like a 16 or 17-year-old. But anyway, here's the clip.
You know you're trying to mess with us? We ain't some foreigners out here. You feel me? All right, take a Quran if you want, but next time you try to make a joke, I'll knock you out. You feel me? We ain't playing.
Next time you try to make a joke, I'll knock you out. And keep in mind here, Robert, this is Sheikh Uthman. He is the hero of many young Muslims around the world. And the example he sets is someone's joking, someone makes funny or something like that, knock them out. You just knock them out. And if you get caught calling for jihad, just lie about it. Doesn't matter how much evidence they have on you. It wasn't me. Just say it wasn't me. What are they gonna do? You can deny it all day long. So that's the example. But now, Robert, we want to get into, because Robert, this is there are two things. One, the level of hypocrisy here, in that because we condemn violence, we're somehow responsible for someone who commits violence. But the people who actually call for violence and encourage violence are never responsible for the violence. So that's one issue. But at the same time, I have to regard the people who are accusing you and accusing me of somehow being responsible for this. That's part of jihad, right? That's the effort there is to silence critics of Islam.
No doubt about it. And so let's go to Nigeria.
All right. So notice, everyone, we're about to go through actual jihad attacks. And keep in mind, Islam is never responsible for any of these.
Fulani herdsmen in Nigeria, Kaduna State, killed 50 Christians and abducted a Catholic priest. And it was noted that the Fulani are doing this because they are trying to drive the Christians out of the area and set up an Islamic polity in the region. And so that's real jihad pursued by real Muslims, no fake blood there. 50 Christians dead, many others abducted. Also in Nigeria. Also in Kaduna State, 32 Christians killed, 200 houses destroyed. Same idea, same overall purpose to this. And then in a third incident in Zamfara State, 16 villagers killed, also by the same Fulani herdsmen trying to establish an Islamic polity and terrorize Christians and other non-Muslims in Nigeria. In France, actually, in Marseille, interesting incident recently happened. There was a man named Ivan Colonna, who was the leader of the Corsican independence movement. I didn't know that there was still a Corsican independence movement, I must confess. But Ivan Colonna was actually murdered in prison. He was in prison and he was murdered by a Muslim who was in prison for supposedly blaspheming Muhammad. He was strangled to death by a self-professed jihadist inmate. Strangling, of course, being favored along with beheading because it is striking the neck, as per the Quran, chapter 47, verse 4.
Where would they get the idea to do this over blasphemy?
Over blasphemy is something that they would get from Muhammad, David.
Strange.
Because Muhammad himself actually ordered or requested, I should say, the killing of several people who had insulted him. And he had eager volunteers from among his followers, according to Islamic tradition, rewarded the killers, and thereby set a precedent, since he is the excellent example of conduct, as per Quran 33:21. When he had these people killed and rewarded the killers, he set a pattern that Muslims have followed throughout Islamic history, as the history of jihad shows.
Very strange.
In Israel, there have been 3 jihad terror attacks in the last week. 11 people killed in total in these. And what's noteworthy about the 3 attacks is that there are celebrations now all over the Palestinian areas, with various people in the mosques actually celebrating the murders of these Israelis and screaming Allahu Akbar. And this is, of course, because if killing is something that is prescribed in the Quran, as it is many times, chapter 2, verse 191, kill them wherever you find them. Chapter 4, verse 89, kill them wherever you find them. Chapter 9, verse 5, kill the mushrikun, those who associate partners with Allah, that is, wherever you find them. Behead the unbelievers, chapter 47, verse 4, and so on and on and on. Then when this is actually done, there are great celebrations because these people think that this is a blessed act. It is noteworthy that one of the attackers in one of these 3 attacks, Ibrahim Igbaria, he was actually in prison a few years ago, and he was let out early because the judge, Ehud Kaplan, said we must take into account the suspect's confession, his young age, his clean record, his remorse. And this remorseful individual got out of prison and then murdered 2 Israelis a few days ago.
And I just want everyone to keep in mind for every one of these examples that just because the Quran says that the Jews are the ultimate enemies of Muslims, and just because the Quran says drive them out from whence they drove you out, and hence the attacks on Israel, and just because you have all of these commands to violently subjugate Jews and Christians and to strike at their necks and so on, if we've learned anything about Islam, it's that all of these clear calls for violence have nothing to do with anyone who actually obeys the commands and commits the violence, or the people who are cheering for it afterwards. Nothing to do with that. But if you condemn violence, then you are most certainly responsible for any violence that is carried out anywhere by anyone for any reason.
And David, why would a pious, believing Muslim say that he was remorseful for jihad activity and then get out of prison and commit more?
That is one of life's great mysteries, Robert.
Could it maybe have something to do with the Quran? With chapter 3, verse 28. Let not the believers take unbelievers for their friends in preference to believers. Whoever does that has no connection with Allah, unless you are guarding yourselves against them. Taking security. Guarding yourselves against them is this whole idea of deception, which is explained in great detail in the notes on that passage, and allows a Muslim, in the words of Maulana Maududi, one of the leading Islamic scholars of the 20th century, to pretend that he is on the side of his enemies in order to lead them to complacency and let them take their guard down against them, against the jihadi. And this, of course, also goes back to Muhammad. And when he ordered the murder of one of those who had blasphemed, one of those who had insulted him, Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf, he got one of his followers, Muhammad Maslama, to go and pretend to be the friend of Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf and say, I'm disenchanted with Muhammad, and I think your verses and making fun of him are marvelous, and I will come and work with you. And then he says, hey, you know, your cologne smells great. Can I get a little closer and get a better whiff? And he stabs him to death. War is deceit, as Muhammad is also depicted as saying.
Very strange how the misunderstandings of Islam go all the way back to Muhammad's companions.
Indeed. And, you know, speaking of remorse for jihad terror activity, do you remember the Beatles? Not the Beatles who played music, but the Beatles
in ISIS Beatles?
The ISIS Beatles. Yeah. They were 4 jihadis from England who had English accents, and thus their friends called them the Beatles. And one of them, El Shafi El Sheikh, is on trial now in a U.S. court. And he has explained that now he's older. And he says, being older now and understanding a lot more about religion, he says that his behavior in ISIS was not always in line with or in tone with what is incumbent on me as a Muslim. Now, the first thing I thought of was, he's going to get lenient treatment because he's remorseful, but this really cannot be trusted because nothing he did in reality. He took hostages, he executed some of the hostages, he released some of the hostages for ransom money. That's all in line with the Quran, chapter 47, verse 4, and with Islamic law for how to treat hostages. So there's nothing else Shafi al-Sheikh actually did that is not in line with Islam. But he knows that infidels don't know anything about Islam and that they will believe him when he says, oh, what I did then was not in line with Islam. And so
yeah, it's
walk in a few years.
Yeah, it's he knows we're bombarded on a daily basis here in the West, where politicians across the board, journalists across the board, educators across the board, entertainers across the board, they all bombard us with the idea that anyone who actually obeys Muhammad's commands to commit violence is just misunderstanding the religion. And if you really study it, if you really dig a little bit deeper, you'll see how peaceful and wonderful it is. You ask them how they know this, and no one seems to be able to actually show us. It's just, hey, I had a nice Muslim friend when I was growing up, and so that must be the true Islam, not that stuff you read in the Quran and the Hadith. But he knows that we're bombarded with this idea. And so if you tell Westerners, oh yeah, now that I've been locked up for a while, I took a closer look, and then I saw that Islam is really, really peaceful. They go, you see, we told you all along. All these jihadis need to do is read their sources, and then they'll become peaceful. So let's let this guy up. Give him a cookie. Yeah. Matter of fact, let's pay him for his time that he spent in prison.
Oh, I'm sure that's coming. Actually, that already has come in Canada. What's that fella's name? Oh man, I'm blanking now.
I forget too.
That guy's name? The Canadian guy got $10 million from Justin Trudeau. He was in Guantanamo for a while. There's photographic evidence of him being involved in jihad activity, but he says he was mistreated in Guantanamo, one of the only prison camps where the prisoners gain weight. And it's so terrible. I was just actually talking earlier with a guy who knows some of the guards there, and he says that the guards don't eat as well as the prisoners. But this is supposedly this terrible place. He got $10 million from Trudeau. I can't remember his name.
I forget his name too, but I know who you're talking about. But
in Canada.
Must be nice.
One of the architects of this sort of lunacy, Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State, passed away this week. And I noted at Jihad Watch that she said a few years back, Islam is maybe the most democratic religion.
Sure is.
And we can see all the thriving democracies in the Islamic world that bear her out. But the reality is that there's never been a democracy in the Islamic world except for Turkey, and that Turkey is re-Islamizing and discarding democracy now, and was never fully committed to it. It was enforced from above and never accepted in the countryside outside of Istanbul and Ankara. And there's never been a democracy in the Islamic world other than that, because Islam actually lends itself to authoritarianism. And is maybe the most authoritarian religion, because you have this arbitrary, all-powerful God and this arbitrary, all-powerful prophet who you're supposed to emulate. Where's the basis for democracy in any of that?
Robert, people are pointing out in the chat, they're saying it was Omar Khadr.
Omar Khadr.
That's
the guy's name in Canada?
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Okay. I really thought it was Muhammad something, but I'm sure that's right. I'm getting old. Okay.
You ain't lying.
Huh?
I said, you ain't lying. Me too.
Oh, really? I thought it was just me.
Nope, it's
All
me.
Right. Interesting story out of California. Ahmed Binyamin al-Asiri, formerly known as Kevin Lamar James. He served 16 years for a jihad plot that he hatched with his group, which is called Jamiat ul-Islam Isahi, that is the Party of Authentic Islam. the Authentic Islam Group. And back 15 years ago or so, they were robbing gas stations. But they weren't just robbing gas stations to get money. One of the people in the group explained that it was part of a jihad against the U.S., particularly against American oil companies. But characteristically, they had planned to hit in Southern California not oil companies, but U.S. military facilities and Jewish facilities. There you are again.
I'll never understand why they target the exact places you should target according to the Muslim sources. Strange.
Yeah, the Quran, of course, says the Jews are the worst enemies of the Muslims, 582. Consequently, this is no surprise. But interestingly enough, Ahmed bin Yamin al-Asiri recently was released from prison, and he got arrested almost immediately again for selling 15 pounds of meth. And he's now been sentenced to another prison stint. But what's noteworthy is that he explained when he was first arrested that the plots that they had hatched were part of a series, he said, of incidents to come in a plight, which is odd, he probably meant plot, to defend and propagate traditional Islam in its purity. And then he said, we are not extremists, radicals, or terrorists. We are only servants of Allah. And in any case, it's likely that he was using the meth sales hoping to raise money for new jihad plots, but was foiled again. Kevin Lamar James, Ahmed Binyamin al-Asiri in Southern California. Interesting to note, in none of these stories that I read about this guy over the last few days, nobody said how he converted to Islam, who converted him, where he went to mosque, what they preached there. There's just no curiosity. It's as if these people spring up sui generis out of nothing and have no influences, no friends, no contacts.
And it's very interesting because you get Sheikh Uthman stabbed in an apparent road rage incident. The guy says, I've seen your videos, you're a terrorist. Somehow that gets connected to all of us who've never encouraged any sort of violence against Sheikh Uthman or anyone else. And then we know the guy's motives. We know it's motivating him, and we have to attack the things that motivated him, the people who motivated him, even though the people we're saying motivated him have never called for violence and can't possibly be cited to justify that sort of thing. And yet, as soon as we turn to terrorist attacks, by people saying we're carrying out these attacks in the name of Allah so that we can establish Islamic law and so on, we don't even want to look into what led to it, because everyone knows what led to it. And as soon as you start looking into it, you're a racist and a bigot.
There you go. I got another one like that out of Chicago.
Now this one I've seen. If it's the mosque attack, the foiled mosque attack you're talking about.
Yeah. It turns out, David, that you and I were plotting to blow up a mosque in Chicago. They didn't actually name us personally like Sheikh Uthman did, but CARE's deputy director, the deputy director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, when the news broke that there was a man arrested, three men actually, for plotting to blow up a mosque in Chicago, he said, this disturbing case highlights the real threat posed by anti-Muslim bigotry.
I have to agree here. If these three people were plotting to attack a mosque, we absolutely must, and I say we must, look into their ideology and their reasons for plotting this attack so that we can expose the violent nature of their ideology. So I'm totally in line with that, Robert. Now break down more of the story so we can go after the ideology of these anti-mosque bigots.
Yeah, well, that's how it was reported, incidentally. This fellow, the ringleader, an 18-year-old named Xavier Pelkey, he was from Waterville, Maine. And so the Waterville, Maine Morning Sentinel headline said, Waterville man, 18, plans to use explosives for mass murder at Chicago Mosque.
We got to get this guy, Robert. I'm telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. In Chicago at WLS, Maine teen recruited 2 others to help commit mass murder at Chicago area mosque.
We got to stop it. We got to go after their ideology. We've got to go after these guys.
CNN, same thing. Maine teen accused of plotting to attack a Chicago area mosque. What was left out of all the stories, with the exception of a few, is that Xavier Pelkey is a convert to Islam.
What? I can't believe this.
Oh, David, you're a genius.
Oh,
Xavier Pelkey is a convert to Islam. He's a Sunni under the influence of the Islamic State. And with 2 unnamed teenagers who are also Muslims, he was plotting to blow up a Shiite mosque in Chicago.
So it was Sunnis planning to blow up Shias.
That's right.
And
not only up, but they found multiple firearms, shotguns, swords, knives, bows and arrows, along with homemade ISIS flags.
so Sunnis were planning a massive bloodbath at a Shia mosque just because they're Shias. If this had been Christians, Jews, anyone else launching this attack, this would be shouted from the rooftops, and there would be massive investigations, and that attack would be linked to anyone who has ever criticized Islam in any way. But when it's an ISIS-inspired Sunni attack on a mosque, it's, something happened over there. Yep, we need to condemn the Islamophobia.
Yeah. I mean, Edward Ahmed Mitchell, you really got to hand it to him. He's still running with the anti-Muslim bigotry line, even though he knows full well that the people who are accused of doing this are Muslims. War is deceit. I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah, it's weird because you understand why someone who believes in Muhammad and reads that he said war is deceit would be deceptive. It's just weird that everyone in any position of power in any institution in the West jumps on board. we need to amplify the deception to help them.
Yes, it's very strange. All right, another one out of Israel. This is not violent, but this is a TikTok video of a young man in the Palestinian Authority who took a mezuzah, tore it off a wall, and hit it with a hammer. Took out the scroll of the scripture passage inside and lit it on fire. That is, of course, all of the same contempt and hatred that leads to violent jihad activity, and it stems from exactly the same passages in the Quran that inculcate hatred and contempt for Jews, as 582 that we noted before.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible story out of Italy. Really a nightmare. I still can't believe this story. It was only reported in the Italian press, though. And so I ran a couple of translations of Italian articles about it. Absolutely astonishing story of a couple of Tunisian Muslims in Italy walking around at night, came across a 17-year-old boy, an Italian boy, or a young man, raped him, and then forced him to take them home, where they raped his mother as well. Now, this is not the sort of wholesome story that we like to feature on this program, but it's necessary to note that this kind of thing happens with alarming regularity. There were whole gangs doing this kind of thing on a regular basis in Britain. There are ongoing incidents of this kind in Sweden, Germany, and elsewhere. France, among migrants who are Muslims, and it has a great deal to do with the Quran as well, because of course the Quran allows for the sexual use of non-Muslim women who are considered to have been taken captive, and also the molestation of women who are not covered. Now, this, of course, was a boy and that's a whole other thing. But of course, that kind of behavior is quite common in Afghanistan. Also, for reasons stemming from Islam and the Quran's depiction of the boys like pearls accompanying the virgins in paradise.
And by the way, Robert, this since you mentioned the grooming gangs, notice the parallel. I talked about what Sheikh Uthman and his fans are doing in terms of trying to silence criticism of jihad and the teachings of Muhammad and pedophilia and all these other things. But I mean, pretty much all you do is expose jihad throughout the world. And somehow when there's a stabbing of someone you hadn't heard of, that's got something to do with you. But the goal is, you see, anyone who's criticizing terrorist attacks is responsible for violence, so they're the ones who need to be silenced. The critics of jihad terror are the ones who need to be silenced. The critics of Muhammad's relationship with Aisha and the taking of sex captives and so on, they're the ones who need to be silenced. So notice, I mean, you'd think if they really believe that Islam is wonderful and peaceful, and you'd expect, well, you guys do need to expose all these misunderstanders of Islam so that, you know, these practices can stop. So they should be on the same page with us if they really believe that Islam is wonderful and peaceful. And yet, if you look at what they're saying, they don't want me calling out any horrible practice that Muhammad did. They don't want you calling out terrorist attacks, exposing terrorist attacks. What sort of world do they want? They want a world where they can do anything they want, no matter how horrible, and the entire world keeps their mouth shut about it. We're too scared of being called names to call these things out. What sort of world is that? It's the exact same world that we had in Great Britain, when the police, the social workers, the government officials, they're all aware of these grooming gangs raping and gang raping and pimping these young girls. They all knew about it. They were all terrified to say one word about it. And it wasn't until they were all completely exposed and humiliated and their names dragged through the mud that they said, okay, we'll reluctantly do something to stop these gang rapes and grooming now. But what sort of world do they want? They want a world where you can literally have gangs of Pakistanis going around gang raping little girls, and police will not lift a finger against it because they don't want to be called racist. That's the world that we're expected to live in right now. And hey, shut up about jihad. Shut up about rape. Shut up about all this stuff. And it's just interesting that, I mean, it's lots of people who proclaim peace, love, and tolerance who are telling us to keep quiet about these things.
That's still the world that they live in Britain. I got another story out of Britain where British authorities have actually asked the public to allow Afghan refugees to board in their homes. Now, this is a magnanimous gesture on the part of the British authorities, although I bet none of the people who are asking are going to do it themselves. They just hope other people will. Nobody is discussing, of course, the risks that are involved in that kind of behavior, because we don't know anything about who these people are or what their background is. They haven't been vetted. There's no mechanism to vet them for their cultural attitudes or their religious attitudes, only for criminal and terrorist databases.
Yeah, and notice it's very, in case anyone doesn't understand the point here, I'm sure there are totally peaceful refugees who want to get out of Afghanistan because they want nothing to do with the Taliban, and they were on the side of, you know, the U.S. They were against the Taliban and so on, and now they're in trouble from the Taliban. They don't want to be anywhere near there. There are also people who want to go out there for jihad. And how do you distinguish between someone who genuinely just wants to live a normal life and work and so on, and someone who's pretending to be that but actually wants to go on a killing spree? You have no way of telling the difference. You know, it reminds me of, hey, someone's getting out of prison. If you know nothing about the guy who's getting out of prison, well, he might be a totally reformed, nice person who just needs a place to stay, and so you open up, you know, your door, and so he might be a murderer and a rapist who got charged with a lesser crime, but he's actually a lifelong criminal who's gotten away with a bunch of things, and then he's going to be in your house with your daughter and so on. So it's like, if you don't know, if you have no way of distinguishing between the two, taking a serious risk there. I mean, suppose you thought it was just like 10% likely that this is actually a Taliban supporting guy. Who's actually.
He could be on our side, but still have the same Afghan cultural attitudes that come from Islam regarding infidel women and uncovered women. And there have already been several Afghan refugees in the United States who've been arrested for molestation of one of the refugee workers, and in another case of a little child. And they said this is something that's perfectly acceptable in Afghanistan. They had no idea there was anything wrong with what they were doing.
Yeah, because keep in mind, no one's going to explain it to them. To explain it to them, to explain, hey, things work differently over here. That would that would be like cultural imperialism. It wouldn't be multicultural.
Precisely. And so what you get is this incredible sense of unreality, and the UK asking this, that's actively putting its citizens at risk. And then a funny story comes out of the UN where the Taliban closed all the girls' schools, and the UNICEF said, we are completely blindsided by this. They assured us that they would allow women to be educated. And I think if UNICEF would take the trouble to read the Quran and study it in regard to what it says about women and what it says about deception, they never would have been blindsided by this. But all the people who would tell them, they dismiss as Islamophobes, and that's it.
And it's, how many tens of thousands of attacks have there been just since 9/11? And it's like they got their ears covered up going and their eyes closed. La, 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 la. No matter how clear your message is, jihadis of the world, we will never, ever, 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 ever believe what you're saying about your motivations here.
And it works great.
It does.
I see that time is running out, but I'll just mention one other thing. 3 Muslims this week have sued the Department of Homeland Security because they were questioned about Islam crossing the border, coming back into the country. I don't know where they were, but they live here, and coming back into the United States, they were asked about Islam. And the ACLU actually says in the suit that just as border officers may not single out Christian Americans to ask what denomination they are, which church they attend, and how regularly they pray, singling out Muslim Americans for similar questions is unconstitutional. And I think, the constitutional question aside, to act as if it's just the same thing as bothering Christians in that way is to ignore 40,000 jihad attacks since 9/11, every one of them committed by a Muslim believing in the Quran and acting upon it. And it acts as if there's a total equivalence between one religion and another, such that DHS is just being gratuitously nasty when they ask these Muslims questions at the border. And border officers are famous for being gratuitously nasty. There's no doubt about that. I've been questioned at the border, people asking me, what makes you think you can speak about Islam? I was asked that by a border official one time, and I thought, what does that have to do with the fact that I live in the United States and I want to go home? It doesn't have anything to do with it. He's just being a jerk. Now, maybe this is what these guys were encountering in the same way, but even that would indicate this is something everybody goes through. But also, there is a jihad. There is terrorism. And border officials would be stupid not to take that into account.
Very stupid. The First Amendment says that Congress shall not make a law about the establishment of a religion. Asking you questions about what you think has nothing to do with establishing a religion. And the situation actually could be different. Suppose there was some, violent Christian movement in some country where Christians concluded that they have to go around terrorizing and slaughtering people in the name of Jesus. And then a group of Christians from here went over there and then is coming back. I think it would make perfect sense to start asking them their views of religion. What exactly do you believe that Jesus meant here? What exactly do you think he meant there? It would make perfect sense. So anyway, I don't see any problem there. All right. Well, that's this week in jihad. And so, just keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, Uthman ibn Farouk, when he posted his video, right? I had heard nothing about it. I had no idea he was attacked. He posts this video calling me and AP out for not having made a video condemning the attack on him, which we had absolutely no clue had even occurred. But think about all the things that Robert just mentioned going on in the world. I mean, you're talking about people plotting attacks on Muslims, Muslims plotting attacks on Muslims. And it would be very easy here. Why hasn't Sheikh Uthman condemned that attack? Why hasn't Sheikh Uthman condemned that attack? Why hasn't Sheikh Uthman condemned those numerous attacks in Israel? Does he approve of those things? But if we did that, I mean, if he just wanted to respond and condemn the violence carried out in the name of his religion, he wouldn't be able to even do dawah, because he'd spend all day, every day, condemning the violence carried out in the name of Allah. All right. Any final thoughts, Robert?
Well, it's all in the Quran, you know?
It's all in the critical Quran.
It's all in the critical Quran, explained from key Islamic commentaries and contemporary historical research. There it is.
Available for pre-order, unless you're me, and then you've already got it ahead of time like a boss. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that's This Week in Jihad, and never, ever, 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 ever let people silence you when you're pointing out evil. If you're pointing out evil and people demand your silence and try to intimidate you or name call you into silence, they're the ones with the problem, not you. And the only reason they pull these stunts, the only reason people pull these stunts trying to silence us, is because it works with a lot of people. If we ever have an informed population of free people who do not put up with this, the terrorist attacks would be exposed. Islam would be exposed. Islam would be fully exposed. And so all you Muslims who are watching right now, I understand that there are plenty of Muslims who do not approve of the violence carried out and would never approve of Sunnis trying to attack a Shia mosque. And I understand you don't approve of this. We know that. We understand that. We're talking about the actual jihadis and those who cover for them. But just keep in mind, if you are genuinely peaceful, then these are the same guys who would eventually come for you. They would eventually label you a hypocrite or a heretic, and they would come after you. So don't get mad at us for exposing the jihadis. If you are truly peaceful, you should be on our side, joining with us to expose the jihadis. Because again, we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat here. All right, thanks, Robert. Get a copy of, well, you get a pre-order that. It's available at the beginning of May. And yeah, we'll do some shows about the critical Quran once it's available to everyone. And we'll be mentioning this several times. See you all next week, where we'll discuss whatever happens between now and then. Hopefully,
in Jihad.
Hopefully it'll be nothing, but it will be something.
Right. Blank slate.